presentation.
All right, I will share my screen, and I want to introduce James Wogan, our Wellness Director, who will be part of this presentation. I'm going to do as little talking as possible because I do a lot of that at these meetings. And Jenna Roble, our wellness coordinator up at Camp Olindo. She's been a school counselor with us for many years, and joined our wellness staff this year, and it's been great having her leadership. So I will go ahead and share screens as we start our presentation on our wellness program thus far. Let me toggle over here. Here we go. So just to ground the board in our wellness program, sites are doing, all that programming, the parent support and outreach, intake meetings, telehealth. Still doing care coordination with our school counselors and our staff for students whose mental health is a priority. Working with the bias reporting teams, our wellness coordinators are all part of the bias reporting teams and are playing an instrumental part in restorative justice work. Tobacco and substance abuse prevention, the brief intervention system that we've had in place for many years runs out of wellness. And then also supporting our staff and our students, but around the knowledge for trauma-informed practices and how we can help students self-regulate and manage their own mental health. So I think.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me this evening. I am going to give a review of the multi-tiered system of support. You might hear it referred to as MTSS, and how that applies to our campuses. So Tier 1 is where 75 to 90% of our students are thriving. And the Tier 1 supports are things that all students access. And so specifically, there are some specific things that are listed here. It's the school culture, it's the school clubs, it's the activities, not only the celebration of diversity, but the diversity, equity, and inclusion committees that are working on our campuses. It's the academies cohort right now, and academies when we're on campus, and every student is going to academy every day. It's the alpha assigned counselors. Every student has a counselor. It's wellness in terms of the outreach we do in classes like AUHSD and PE9, and having the wellness centers open for everybody to come in, anybody to come in, just to kind of come in and hang out, get information. So those are all things that are at Tier 1. In Tier 2, this is where we are seeing students who are starting to struggle. And there are things that we do. It could be a referral to the Wellness Center for an official check-in. It could be, this isn't listed on here, but it could be a referral to the SRT. Every campus has an SRT, which is a student review team, which is a collaborative team that has wellness, counselors, admin, special ed representatives, school psychologists, and we review cases of students who are struggling for any variety of reasons, whether it's academic, socio-emotional. The beginnings of student discipline, in attendance, the student attendance review team, which is the site-based team. And then Amy talked about the bias incident reporting team, also the Tier 2 intervention. And then once we have done these processes, sometimes this is where it ends for students. They get some supports that they need. Sometimes they need even more support. And that Tier 3 intervention is an IEP. Students may qualify for special ed services. They may qualify for Section 504 accommodations. They may be provided wellness services on an ongoing basis. We start with short-term 5 to 8, we review cases, but really 5 to 8 sessions, I should say. And then in terms of discipline, this is where we see expulsion proceedings and diversion. And in regards to attendance, this is the district-wide student attendance review board that reviews all of the upper higher level attendance cases. So switching gears a little bit, telehealth services is something we've been providing since last spring. We have definitely, this fall, August, we switched gears and started offering a much more robust system of telehealth services. It was fairly limited last spring for a variety of reasons, but who's supporting students via telehealth and how? So it's intake specialists, it is wellness coordinators, it is our mental health interns, which staff all of our wellness centers. It's school psychologists, and it's the school counselor staff. So we are all doing it in a variety of ways. It's individual appointments. It's 15-minute drop-ins, meaning a lot of different systems are being used across campuses, but they basically ping somebody and say, hey, can I just have a little check-in? There are campuses that are doing things at lunch, again, drop in via Zoom. And so those are all being administered at every campus, including ACIS.
Thank you, Jenna, and James Wogan, LCSW School Administrator and Director of Wellness. I'd like to review our wellness goals, but also start with a big shout out to our student representatives who spoke earlier this evening and also at the last board meeting. They shined a light on wellness and many of the activities that we are doing. As Jenna said, we are concentrating in Tier 1. Prevention work, outreach, universal work, reaching all students. Our goals are centered around equity and shared vision, listening to our students, parents, and community, establishing programming for all students, and assisting students to be healthy. So sometimes we talk about the difference between mental health and supporting students to be healthy versus mental illness. We identify and assist students who need extra support, and then we provide intensive support for students who are high risk, and often that is multi-generational support. So often we're supporting the student and the family concurrently. Sometimes that looks like, as Jenna mentioned, care coordination, evaluation and referral, linking people with resources. And then working in a continuous cycle of inquiry and improvement, we use our data, both performance measures and outcome measures, so that we continuously improve wellness. By the way, we're very grateful to be embraced by the board, superintendent, and leadership, including Amy here. So I'd like to share one of the 7-day, this was mentioned by the student representative from Acalanes High School, 7 days, 7 stress hacks. All of the wellness centers are doing similar kind of outreach around mental health and well-being. And this graphic was created by the wellness coordinator at Acalanes High School, Alan Choi. We could go to the next slide. We've done, at the request of our parents and guardians, we've done a great deal of outreach to our parent and guardian community, both in listening as well as sharing of information. Dr. Nickerson approached me and requested that we put together workshops. This came about at the request of parents and guardians. After speaking with Amy and Aida and Dr. Nickerson, we put together monthly workshops for parents, starting with parenting teenagers during COVID-19, during a pandemic. And then last month, 2 presenters, 2 of our very own, a wellness coordinator and one of our counselors, presented a workshop on managing stress and anxiety. These workshops were attended by parents in all of our schools. We do polling questions in the workshop. So by all of our schools, and including ACIS, and in students in all of our grades. In response to one of our polling questions, 92% of parents said that their teenagers' stress and anxiety has gone up since COVID. And so they appreciated not only the information that we were sharing, but some of the feedback we received is that parents had connected with each other, something they really appreciated. So our wellness centers at every school continue with communication, proactive communication with parents via phone calls, emails, consultations. It's really about collaboration and working together during distance learning. And this will continue as we approach the next transition. Jen is going to speak again about because I think you want to hear from people who are hands-on about programming and what's going on in our schools.
Yeah, so we've gotten really creative this semester in terms of how to reach students. So a lot of us have been pushing into classes. At Campo, we went into all PE9 classes and all HSD classes and semester electives in August to introduce ourselves and say hi. The teachers were very generous with the time to do so. And this is happening at all campuses in different ways. Cohort academies, Wellness is providing guidance and presentations in the cohort academies. Academy session groups, we're getting Q Scouts up and running from the district, throughout the district in the next several weeks. School-wide presentations on suicide prevention and awareness, and this is both to staff and students. Bring Change to Mind programming. Bring Change to Mind is a mental health awareness club that has been on our campuses for a good 4 to 5 years. And their West Coast director is a Campo grad, which is why she kind of approached us early on as this club was launching. And all 4 campuses have this, all 4 comprehensive campuses have this. I don't believe ACIS does yet. And then in different ways, there's take-home wellness kits. At Campo, we have a table, and I think other campuses are doing things slightly differently. They're having a day where they can come by and pick things up. And these are both reproductive and menstrual kits, as well as journals, self-care kits and activities, and those kinds of things that students can come and pick up when they're on campus picking other things up. We have started to provide in-person support at all, actually at all 5 campuses. And this is looking different at different campuses. We have a variety of in-person, after school, and before school. There are some small groups that are also happening after school. These are all done with precautions, spaced. At Campo, we haven't done anything inside. It's all been outside. It's starting to get a little bit darker, so we're gonna have to, our stuff has all been in the afternoon and early evening, so we're gonna probably have to look for some spaces. And the group counseling, those discussions are starting in terms of when and how best to proceed with those in person. And we partner with some really amazing schools and organizations. What mental health interns come from St. Mary's College. Those are primarily students who are 3rd-year grads who are in marriage and family therapy programs. And then San Jose State and Berkeley, we have also master's level social workers who are focusing on different areas. And they are also working on their school credentials for social work. And that's the same for St. Mary's. We have a couple of those as well. We also have interns through Rainbow Community Center and BACR, the Bay Area Community Resources Program. Oh, this is me too. So sorry. So how do we support our most at-risk students? So AUHSD has been using Columbia Protocol, the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, for 3 years now, I believe. And we've really moved to having all wellness counseling and psychologist staff to use this protocol anytime a student is expressing suicidal ideation. It's data and research based, and there's very structured questions that lead us to what the next steps are. And so we're moving towards a very uniform approach to suicidal ideation, with the hopes of reducing the number of 5150s that we actually have to initiate. And so, as I mentioned before, this fall, we've conducted trainings on suicide prevention with staff, given them guidelines in terms of distance learning and being on Zoom all day and how to move forward if a student presents as having suicidal ideation, either in Zoom or they read something at home while they're grading, and how to move forward with that so that they can get support to the student and they can get support for themselves as well in dealing with the situation. In terms of those students that are exhibiting suicidal ideation, we've been seeing them via telehealth. They've also been prioritized in terms of in-person support. As James mentioned previously, collaboration with parents and guardians and any outside providers that the students might have. And the integrated care, collaborative care partnerships with local agencies in terms of giving referrals. And as I mentioned, in-person support has now become available for those students that have the highest risk or the highest need in regards to suicidal ideation.
Thanks, Jenna. One of the things I wanted to show the board was we have been collecting some site data, and it's been a little bit challenging as we sort of transition to doing everything online and through phone calls and emails to reach out to parents. But our intake specialists do a logging system of logging contacts, logging outreaches that they make, parent emails, phone calls, anytime they're connecting with a parent or student. So I wanted to sort of give you this graphic to really show all 4 sites are really engaged in programming activities. That's really the push out of like the stuff you see on Instagram. That's 7 hacks for 7 days, 7 hacks for wellness. The self-care kits, like just this push out kind of tier 1 level engaged in that. You can see that that's really been the bulk of their work. Parent outreach is the second piece that we've really focused on, and that's really, I think when I talk to the coordinators, parent consultation is a lot of that. What do I do when my kid won't get out of bed in the morning? What do I do when my kid just doesn't want to turn on their camera anymore and is disengaging from work? So consulting with parents and really partnering with them around student behavior is critical. Intake session or new services, that's relatively steady from site to site. And then counseling sessions, which has grown from where we were last spring in March. And I'll sort of show you this way. What we're seeing is about 40% of the work that wellness is doing is in that tier 1. And those intake services are the intake sessions, which is when we're like intaking a new student to see if counseling is appropriate for them and starting that short-term counseling work. And parent outreach is really that tier 2 level work. And that's about 20% of wellness activity. And then when you think about tier 2 and tier 3, that is that intake session, counseling session piece where we're doing one-to-one services with a student. And when I talk to Jenna and Alan, and I talk to Amelia and Andy, our 4 coordinators, we are filling up our interns with counseling sessions. They are seeking more support. In March, they're getting used to telehealth. But now that we can also bring students one-to-one, I think we'll continue to see more counseling sessions. There was a little bit of hesitation when our interns like, will we see kids? Will this really happen? And I think the programs are getting up and underway in terms of providing that one-to-one support we know is so critical during this time. And we hope to do more of that, obviously, in the hybrid model. So again, spending most of our time where we should be spending it in that programming piece, but also seeing those individual counseling sessions kind of come back after they dipped in March, April, and May, when we were just kind of adjusting to the new world of Zoom and telehealth. Okay.
So next steps for us as we move forward is to continue to increase in-person opportunities to serve students. Our interns have been cleared by all of our agencies that Jenna mentioned, the agencies and our university partners, for whom we're very grateful. They've been cleared for in-person work, so that allows us to serve students in a one-to-one setting or telehealth or some combination of both. Also, as Amy mentioned, and I think Jen as well, is this small groups, is seeing kids in cohort academies as well as groups like Q Scouts. And then intensive support for students who either have identified themselves through their behavior or with their words. We know that sometimes kids don't always verbalize their feelings, but sometimes they show us how they're doing through their behavior. So big shout out to teachers for recognizing when students are showing some signs. It's much harder sometimes during Zoom sessions to recognize behaviors, but our people are very perceptive. And then sometimes that involves care coordination linkage to resources. So we're also simultaneously building out telehealth with counseling appointments, small group counseling, workshops for parents and guardians that are, and consultations. Then we do evaluation, referral, care coordination. So we're continuing to build and strengthen our support. And then I just do want to mention the strength and the bravery of the students. Of what we have seen is kids reaching out themselves. It is a trend of students identifying themselves and saying, and I think some of this happens through the good work of Jenna, other wellness coordinators and intake specialists, is kids saying, I need someone on my side. Some students don't like the word help, but sometimes they reach out, and increasingly kids have become, the stigma is reducing, and kids are reaching out to ask for someone to be on their side. So I'm honored to be part of this wellness team and to support the work that's happening. In our next slide, I think Jenna will highlight some of our, look at this array of support we have.
Yeah, so first and foremost, wellness could not happen without all of the community parent club and education foundations. So we thank you for that very valuable support. And some of these I've also previously mentioned: Rainbow, Sandy Hook Promise, which is behind the Say Something app, Contra Costa Crisis Center for Suicide Prevention Resources, NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Planned Parenthood, BACR, and 2P. Those have all been mentioned before.
Yeah, okay.
Just want to finish with some upcoming events and resources. One of our partners, the Contra Costa County Office of Education, through their 2PE, which is Tobacco Use Prevention and Education, has a webinar on November 19th at 5:30, attending to the needs of oneself and others. Some of the other events include a day of support for people who've experienced loss of a loved one to suicide. And then our partners, Rainbow Community Center, highlighting some of the other resources that we have shared with parents and guardians in our workshops. I wanted to put these in the slides so that if you have time, these are all hot links and you should be able to click on these and see additional support and information.
I think we'll open it up to questions and I'll stop sharing.
Question. Let me just double check. Right, no public comment. So to the board, questions, comments? Dr. Severson?
I had one question. On a recent parent survey, there was a question asked, about how much are you familiar with the wellness centers? I can't exactly remember how it was worded, and I don't even remember what the percentage was, but it was definitely lower than the how much are you familiar with like Academy, something like that. And I think there's a lot of reasons why there's a disparity between how much parents are familiar with Academy versus wellness centers. So one, I'm super pleased to see that we're continue to do parent outreach, because I think that's important. I think there's still some gaps to fill in parent understanding. And two, I don't know, I apologize I didn't ask this question or preview this question, because I don't know if you know the answer offhand, either Amy or Aida, but do we know, was there a difference by school site in that question? Was there one school that was the parents seemed more familiar with wellness centers where another school site not, or was it across? And is there anything to learn from one school site to the other, or focus one area as well?
Again, I think
I didn't look at it by site by that, but I will right now. If there's other questions, I can get back to you. I'll filter it right now.
Yeah, but it's such a good point, and especially for incoming ninth graders for whom we've done the concerted outreach. Sometimes we find that our parents and guardians who have been with us, by January or February, we want our saturation to be, close to 100%, where parents and guardians are familiar with the wellness centers, even if they haven't accessed them. So yeah, that is a helpful question to ask, and certainly we see as the longer kids have been with us, the more the more familiar they are.
I think too, Chris, one of the things that we're trying to address is helping, I think, with a lot of the push out the information, to see wellness centers as a resource and not something you use just if you're not doing well mentally. It's really trying to destigmatize the mental health and make this about wellness and well-being and lots of coping strategies, and sort of that notion that, hey, we all have moments where we need a little support, or we need some good advice, or somebody to talk to, a 15-minute check-in. And those are strategies people, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Jenna, I'm looking down at you in Zoom. Like, that seems to be stuff you guys kind of honed during the pandemic in March, April, and May.
Absolutely. I think, I think the wellness centers struggled just because, this transition. We did offer telehealth, but really providing that outreach in terms of like, we're here, this is what we can offer. We are much busier now than we were in the spring.
Yeah, thank you. So terrific work and terrific presentation, super helpful. I know I actually took a moment to take a picture of these 7 hacks and text it to my teenager, my sophomore, and he claims he doesn't yet know about it. So we're going to talk about it. But I just think it's so important because our community is struggling. There's so much, and so all of the investment in wellness for the last several years is just benefiting us so much. But I would love it if you could elaborate. I don't know if it's better for you, Jenna or James, to elaborate about Q Scouts and maybe some of the and how that I don't know enough about that, and would love for the benefit of the folks on the listening from the public to know about what that is, and how how that's working in Academy and other things. Just would love you to elaborate on that.
Can you take that, Jenna?
So Q Scouts is a curriculum offered for our students that identify as queer, and anywhere on the spectrum. And so, and for allies as well, actually. And so that's, it's right now, I think they have it as an 8-session curriculum, but it often goes, it has gone all year in the past when we've run it, just as a support and resource group for those students.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we started a few years ago. Rainbow Community Centers helped us begin it at Las Lomas. And then it quickly grew to, I think all 4 sites have a Q Scout group that goes.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Mr. Hockett?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, I think it was about 3.5 years ago that you made the presentation to this board about a wellness center. And I think you were going to, introduce in Las Lomas and kind of see how it went, whatever. And we kind of said, can't we do it all 4 sites like tomorrow morning? And I think in 3.5 years, how far we've come. I mean, this is just, it's fantastic. And we weren't expecting a global pandemic 3.5 years ago, which of course put so much more challenges, not in the sense that our students needed this so much more, but they were distant. And so that was a double challenge. So I just want to, I look back at what we've done the last few years. I've been on the board, at least. I mean, this is just front and center. And I just, really give a shout to all of you that are doing such fantastic work. And I think it's been a real benefit to our students. And it'll only get better. I think Dr. Stevenson raising good points, and Ms. Conley as well, that we still got to get that word out to those students and those parents, especially who aren't really aware of all the resources we have. So I just want to give a shout out to all of you.
Thank you.
Ms. Coppersmith?
I have to echo Mr. Hockett's comments. I think he was reading my mind. I feel like the dream has become reality in such a short time. And I'm incredibly impressed with how far we've come. And I know it's like most things in education, there's always something new to be learned, always another place to go. But thank you. I'm overwhelmed by how far we've come, considering, especially during the pandemic, when our students probably need this support more than they ever have, and the families as well. So thank you.
And I'll just circle back to the question. There's really no difference between the school sites. I mean, nothing significant. I just went through the comprehensives. ACIS is very different, clearly. I mean, within a percentage point, which is not statistical. So statistically significant. Sorry, I've been talking all day. So no difference between the school sites.
Aida, am I right in remembering that I think that the question was related to sort of what was like some of the most important things you want to get back on campus for, or?
There were 2 separate questions. There was one, what do you want to come back for? The other one was, there was a series of, I know what Academy is used for. I know how my child can access Academy. I know where I can get academic help. And then the other side was, I know how to access the wellness center at my school. I know what services are offered through the wellness center. So those were the questions offered outside of any kind of small group questions. And those were just our questions about improvement strategies for what we're offering right now.
Thank you.
I think maybe, Chris, just pondering kind of what you said, I think one of the things that I know the intake specialists and coordinators have really focused on is pushing things out through mediums of social media, which kids are to access kids. Our big concern March, April, May was like, how do we reach the kids? And that's when you saw a huge, I mean, I learned how to use Instagram because of our wellness centers. And I know, right? Like I had to see all these things that they were pushing out. And so I think in our efforts to really put out a kid-friendly medium or student-friendly medium, sometimes you forget the more traditional, not forget, but you de-emphasize the ways you're reaching out to parents in a more traditional sense, because we needed kids and we needed students to be able to access, so I know that there were many meetings last spring about what can we push out, how do we do like a painting class, like what could we do via Zoom? And getting a handle on that a little bit better now, I think that's why we're seeing the uptick in counseling services, parent consultations, kind of more of a return to normal services. And I think one of the things the coordinators, James and I, will be talking about is what can we learn from the pandemic that we could take rolling forward? I think there are students that have benefited from telehealth, and there's certainly, you know, our presence, the presence on Instagram and what the sites push out and link to, I think is becoming a critical piece for student communication. But maybe we should think about our parent communication and put some stuff out on Nextdoor, maybe, I don't know, but that could be something we do. Yeah, Jenna?
I think we all contribute to our parent newsletters. I know I put, sometimes I repeat a week, but I think every week we have something in all of the newsletters for all of the campuses.
And we're learning from our kids. You know, we don't know. We listen, but don't experience what it's like to be a 15-year-old in the year 2020. You know, right now. So I think you're right, Amy. Our kids are teaching us a lot. We're pushing out a lot of information and focused on mental health and well-being, and we're also learning a great deal about the delivery of services. I had the good fortune to meet when wellness centers were just inchoate and starting with Amy at Las Lomas and Adriana, and to see this vision. Yeah, I'm in such agreement to see the shared vision become a reality, and now to join the team. It's a privilege. We're helping a lot of kids. We're helping a lot of kids.
Any other questions, comments? I also want to add my thanks. And I guess the only other thing is, I think that just like everything else, coming back after the spring into the fall, you know, the start of school with a little bit more structure, a little bit more sense of this is what school is for now, has made a huge difference in terms of, you know, sort of accepting that things are different, so we're going to figure out how to do it in this new way, and reaching out, and also for the students to be accepting of it as well. It's kind of not so much, you know, I don't like this, I don't like this. It's more like, okay, we're here, we got to do it, and then figuring out ways to go with it. So thanks very much for continuing to push things out. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.